that we've talked about. One of them is dispositional tolerance. This is where your body creates a tolerance for the drug fairly rapidly, and this is what happens with tobacco. It also happens with alcohol. Your body metabolizes the substance faster. And the reason it metabolizes it faster, especially in the case of alcohol, is because you have alcohol dehydrogenase in your system, and it increases the amount of alcohol dehydrogenase in your system. So you develop a tolerance faster. Pharmacodynamic tolerance, the nerve cells become less sensitive to the drug. This is what happens with opioids. And that's one of the reasons why first time you take heroin, if you take the same amount the second time, you don't have nearly the same reaction. And of course this has to do with this pharmacodynamic tolerance. And of course your body, knowing that your body knows that you're taking this stuff, so it produces more cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin is a substance that comes out of your gallbladder. I know. It's good stuff. So if you don't have a gallbladder, then of course you can't do this. If you don't have a gallbladder, then you can't break down fats very well. You also are more addicted to things, so you got to be careful if you don't have a gallbladder. Behavioral tolerance, the brain compensates for the effects of the drugs by using parts of the brain that are not affected. We see this with people that are drunk. Sometimes they will get caught and they act completely sober, even though seconds before they were just stoned out of their minds. You can do this. It's possible. Usually it has to do with fear of being caught, fear of being arrested, that kind of thing. Reverse tolerance, as the drug destroys tissue, the user becomes more sensitive to the drug and can tolerate less and less of the substance. This happens to alcoholics who suffer from cirrhosis of the liver, of course. Their liver is no longer processing the alcohol efficiently, and so it takes less and less of the alcohol to make them drunk. This kind of works with marijuana as well. Remember, marijuana is fat soluble. Marijuana stays in your system for an extended length of time, maybe up to a month. So if you smoke every day, that marijuana you smoked yesterday is still pretty much in your system. So you don't have to smoke as much marijuana to get stoned the next day. And you can just accumulate this stuff until you're pretty much stoned almost all the time. Your body is trying to get rid of that stuff every day. And so it just takes even a hint. I mean, you can be around people that have smoked marijuana, and if they're getting secondhand smoke, they'll get stoned because they've got so much in their system that they'll get stoned. Acute tolerance or tachyphylaxis. This is the brain and the body adapt instantly to toxic effects of the drug. This is what happens with tobacco. Your brain becomes almost the first time if you've ever smoked, the first time you smoked you probably got sick. Second time you smoked you didn't get sick. Well, that's because of tachyphylaxis. Your body has become tolerant to that system. Or to that substance. People who try to commit suicide using barbiturates may experience the same instant tolerance and survive a dosage that would kill a horse. We've seen this. If we can get them into the hospital and pump out their stomach, usually, despite the fact that they got a lethal dose in their system, they won't die. It won't kill them. And this is kind of irritating. It's kind of a strange way to commit suicide. If you're just taking barbiturates, you're probably okay. If you're taking barbiturates with a fifth of whiskey, then you're dead. You might as well just cash it in. But as long as you just take the barbiturates, tachyphylaxis keeps that substance in your body. I told you you can't overdose on LSD. You really can't overdose on LSD, but you can get a super dose just by taking a double dose or drinking a teaspoonful or whatever. It only takes a couple of micrograms of LSD to get you stoned. But you can double the dosage, you can quadruple the dosage. It really doesn't make any difference. Because of tachyphylaxis, you're only going to have a select type of trip. You can't overdose on this stuff. Select tolerance. The body develops tolerance to mental and physical effects at different rates. This occurs with opiates and sedatives. With barbiturates, sleep will be induced long after the euphoric effect is no longer present. And of course, that's really why people take barbiturates is as a sleeping aid. Inverse tolerance or kindling. This is really kind of dangerous. This is one of the reasons why you never know what's going to happen with drugs. Brain chemistry changes so that the person becomes more sensitive to the effects of the drugs, and you never know when this is happening. That's the problem. With continued use, cocaine and marijuana users will get a minimal effect, and then after months will start getting an intense reaction. The cocaine will kill you. The marijuana won't kill you, of course. You'll just get really stoned just from a little bit of nothing. But cocaine will kill you. You can stroke out. You can have a heart attack. So you got to be really careful with this stuff. It's one of the reasons why cocaine users, everything's fine. They're using it for whatever they're using it for, and then all of a sudden they die of a heart attack. What happened? Well, the inverse tolerance's kindling took place, and now they're dead. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Marijuana, of course, you just get really stoned from hardly anything, so not so bad. Cross tolerance. If a person develops a tolerance for one drug in a family of drugs, they will be tolerant of other drugs in that family. The opioid family is this way. If you're tolerant to heroin, if they give you morphine or codeine or methadone, it has less of an effect on you. A person that is tolerant of Xanax will be tolerant of other benzodiazepines. A person tolerant to barbiturates will be tolerant to benzodiazepines as well. So this is known as cross tolerance. And of course, this is a problem when I go in to see the doctor and I say opioids don't work on me. They think that I'm using something else, and I'm getting a cross tolerance. If they don't know me, of course. If they do know me, they just know that I'm a jerk. And who cares? Tissue dependence. This is the biological change of the body to adapt to the presence of the drug. This usually occurs after prolonged use. You get tissue dependence. Allostasis sometimes will occur where the tissues and the organs of the body depend on the drug to be functional. Alcoholics are a lot of time have this problem. They can't function. Their body needs the alcohol. They go into withdrawal fairly readily if they don't have a little hair of the dog or whatever. And this is one of the reasons why these people will take a nip in the morning, and then they'll take a nip at lunch. And then they'll drink all night, and then in the morning, of course, they need another nip to keep their bodies going. It's because they are tissue dependent. We see this from time to time with people that are really good alcoholics. The only thing you can do with them is detoxify, and it's not fun. In these circumstances, cessation of the drug usage will cause dangerous and dramatic withdrawals, and of course that's what they're trying to stay away from. We had a guy in Germany, and his wife was a doctor, and this guy was a captain, I think, and captain in supply, that's what he was. Anyway, so one day he came into work, and it was snowy just like it is here. But this is in Germany, of course. Icy roads. He slid off the road, and when the Polizei came, they thought he acted a little strangely, so they decided that they needed to draw blood alcohol on him. Well, in Germany, in the United States, you can refuse a blood alcohol test. In Germany, you can't. So he tried to fight it, which was a huge, huge mistake, because they'll knock you out to draw your blood. I mean, it's that bad. They held him down and they drew his blood, and he had a blood alcohol of like 2.73. you know, 0.8 is drunk, okay? And he was 2.73. So he was a mess. He was really, really drunk. But he was functional. And the point was that he was so tolerant to alcohol that you couldn't tell he was drunk. But they drew his blood. And of course his wife is a doctor, so she argued that for him, 2.73 was normal. It was natural. I mean, that's the only way he could function was by having a blood alcohol of 2.73. The guy was in his 30s. He died about 3 years later of cirrhosis of the liver. Of course, his liver blew up. But this guy was totally fun. You couldn't tell. I mean, he worked every day with a 2.73 blood alcohol in his system. He would go, for lunch, he would drink. Well, in Germany, of course.
If an individual, say they're like either mid or late 30s,
Okay.
and they have a severe drinking problem, like they wake up in the morning, the only way to get them going is if they have a small...
Snort?
No.
What are they having a small of? This is a big, I guess. You said small.
A small, like, what do you call those, half pints of whiskey.
Oh my God.
Seriously. Okay, so the only way to get going is through one of those, and then they're okay, you know, they can kind of function. But then if they have another one, they're like way better. They're starting to get happy. Okay, so this happens throughout the whole day, every day. What is this person's lifespan? Seriously, because this person will drink maybe, he could drink 2/5 of whiskey a day if you let him.
And that's the only way you can be normal.
Yeah.
I would say his lifespan, if he makes it into his 40s, is lucky. Because your liver can't tolerate that. Your liver's got to process all that alcohol.
I was thinking we're like maybe mid-30s.
Could be. It all depends on how functional his liver is. Is this a white guy?
No,
it's a native guy? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then this other guy I know, he drank those little tiny shooters.
Oh, sure.
Every day, like 6 or 7 of them. He died really early of liver cirrhosis.
Sure.
Really, really early. I think maybe his mid-30s too, you know, but he lived part of his life on a reservation, so it was a dry reservation.
So you had to go find it off the
know.
res or find somebody who would supply it. Wow, that's terrible. It's sad. The reason I asked you about the race was because, remember, the white people have been drinking for thousands of years. You guys have been drinking for 400 or 500 years. So the tolerance level for white people tends to be a little bit higher than it is for natives. So, yeah, I mean, if it's... if the guy's Eastern Europeans drink vodka. They drink really heavy alcohol. People from Canada, they didn't go through prohibition, I'm sorry. They're on probation now. What did I learn the other day? There are more Canadians in the United States illegally than there are any other group.
There are more Canadians over here than Mexicans?
Yeah, there's more Canadians illegally in the United States than there are Mexicans in the United States illegally. That's what they do.
My stepmom's one of them.
There you go, see? I know, they just keep coming down. They keep flooding down from Canada. But we don't notice it. I don't know why we don't notice it. I have no idea. We used to not care about illegal Mexicans either. I mean,
You know, in Canada they sell 151 proof. Something like that, yeah.
It's almost Everclear, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think they sell it in the States. It's a little bit stronger than the States. They were saying that it's illegal in the States, but in Canada it's legal there.
Most hard liquor in the United States is about 40%. It's about 80 proof. So even, you know, tequila, mezcal, you know, that kind of stuff, vodka, your vodkas are all about 80.
One more question, how come people get those?
Not attractive.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yellow eyes.
No. They get this nose.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've seen that.
Their blood vessels are breaking in their noses.
Is it just only?
Rosacea, it's rosacea.
Oh,
It's
so
alcohol.
It's alcohol.
Yeah, it's alcohol-related rosacea. Because all your blood vessels expand. So, I mean, if you do this constantly, the blood vessels in your nose will expand to the point that they burst. And so people will have those noses, which is always attractive.
And it's caused by
Alcohol, alcohol is a vasodilator. As that allows your blood vessels to expand. They'll get rosy cheeks too. That's cute. Anyway, no, the trajectory for your friend or for this individual that you know isn't very good. It'll blow his liver out. I mean, that stuff's that's a toxin. I mean, if he's drinking that much alcohol, his body's got to clear that stuff from his system every day. Remember, the human body tries to stay balanced. So if you put alcohol in it, then your liver tries to keep everything balanced. That's why we develop tolerance. I mean, otherwise we'd just be drunk and it would be great. We'd be drunk and we wouldn't have to worry about it. We wouldn't have to drink more tomorrow afternoon instead of the same amount. We could drink the same amount every day and get drunk.
Can your whole body get drunk, or is it just?
Well, your brain, the way it works is it starts out in your prefrontal cortex and then it walks its way back. So can your whole body be drunk? It's actually just your brain that's drunk. But your body has to clear that stuff from your system.
Oh, so like when you're drunk, you can't the reason like body parts don't function is
Because the brain, you've anesthetized portions of the brain. Has to do with your brain. As cool as that is. That's why you can't get your key in the keyhole. Won't quite fit. And your hand doesn't, your fingers won't quite hold it right. And when you're driving, you make these really strange movements while you're driving, so you're swerving all over the road. And you keep thinking you're hitting ice, or dodging a deer or something. In select circumstances, cross-dependence will occur when dependence of one drug can be alleviated with another drug. So we can balance our drugs by taking different drugs at different times, which is kind of cool. Psychological dependence, addiction used to mean that the person taking the drug was tissue dependent. And so we talked about, we didn't think that cocaine was an addictive substance. We didn't think marijuana was addictive. But remember, marijuana stays in your system for an extended length of time. So if you break down marijuana, it's got a half-life. I can't remember what the half-life is, 5 to 7 hours. You start breaking it down after 5 to 7 hours. You've cut the effect of THC in your system in half, but it stays in your system for an extended length of time. And for that reason, it's almost like you're slowly withdrawing from the drug. And that's one of the reasons why, and we didn't realize that. But with continued research in brain imaging technology, it has been recognized that psychological dependence is an important factor in addictive behavior. The altered states of consciousness that are caused by select drugs can lead to continued misuse to avoid life's problems. It is now acknowledged that psychological dependence occurs before tissue dependence, and that the response rate is from either is similar. Psychological factors that induce reinforcement, drug automatism. Individual uses the drug aimlessly, unconsciously, and repetitively. They don't realize that they're doing it. They go to the refrigerator and grab a beer. How many beers did you have last night? Well, I only had a couple. No, you drank a whole 6-pack. How many? But they didn't realize it because everything was automatic. Negative reinforcement, unpleasant states encourage drug usage. This especially happens with alcoholics. Can happen with smokers waking up during the night and they have to get up and smoke a cigarette because they're going through nicotine withdrawals. It happens with alcoholics. They start to go through withdrawals. They need a hair of the dog to wake up in the morning. They need a little pick-me-up at lunchtime, and then of course they drink all night. I used to work with an anesthetist, and of course this is not the person you want to be an alcoholic, but she was really good. She's the gas passer. She was the person that knocked people out during surgery. But this lady never ate. She didn't eat any solid foods. She drank a screwdriver for breakfast. Is that right? Bloody Mary for lunch. Okay. And she drank all night. But she got her vitamins with orange juice and tomato juice and beer. I know, and she was skinny. I mean, she was a very slender lady. Eventually she died of cirrhosis of the liver, of course, but you can't do that. You can't drink all your meals. She stayed fairly lucid by drinking screwdrivers in the morning. And I had surgery one time. What did I have cut out? Oh, I had a pulled muscle in my leg, and they had to cut it out. She knocked me out. She was the one that knocked me out. She was the one that woke me up afterwards. She didn't kill me. Yeah, well, I'm still alive, so obviously she didn't kill me. But yeah, you could smell the alcohol on her breath, or you could smell the mouthwash, which it had alcohol in it as well. She would always smell like alcohol, which was always interesting. Anyway, she eventually died fairly young. She was in her 50s when she died. This is so sad. Social reinforcement, peer pressure in need of social inclusion encourages continued use. We've talked about this before. You know, you've got friends, and when you go visit your friends, everybody smokes dope, so you have to smoke dope too. You don't smoke dope unless you're around your friends. Whenever you go visit your friends, they always offer you a beer. And so whenever you go over to their house, you get a bottle of beer. You got to keep up with everybody else. You know, that's the way it works in society. So everybody is trying to match each other as far as the beers are concerned. If you buy a round, you buy a round. You don't just buy one for him and just forget that person over there because they're still working on their other beer. That's not the way it works. If you buy a round, everybody gets a new drink. And of course, you have to finish your old drink before you can start your new drink. Isn't that the way it works? I don't know. I never go to bars. Peer pressure. This is one of the reasons why I don't have any friends, because I don't do the right thing at the right time. Opioid effects, the psychological responses to drugs. Opioid effects, numbness, causes you to be numb, gives you a euphoric effect, makes your mouth dry, gives you dry mouth, it constipates you, constipation. Once upon a time there was a guy by the name of Liam Neeson. You may have heard of this guy. He's an actor, a Scottish actor if I'm not mistaken. He came into the hospital with a bowel blockage. And usually you just give somebody a laxative and it cleans them out, but he was locked up. And they had to go in, they had to do abdominal surgery to cut out that. I know. I talked about poop yesterday, and here I am talking about poop again. Anyway, he was so locked up, he was so clogged up that they had to do surgery to pull out that blockage. They tried to go in through his rectum, but it didn't work. And so they had to slice him open and go in and open up his bowel. He's acting again today. So the question is, what was going on? Why was he so constipated? Well, he was a heroin addict. He's not anymore, but he was a heroin addict. One of the things we're going to learn about withdrawals is that withdrawals from heroin, people think that withdrawals from heroin are so horrible. But the reality is people die from alcohol withdrawals far more readily than they do heroin. Nobody dies from heroin withdrawals. Lots of people die from alcohol withdrawals. The reason that people have a hard time staying off of heroin is because they like the euphoria, they like the numbness. And that's what they miss. And that's what they're seeking. It makes you forget. And that's what people want to do. Why in the world do we have so many rock stars that are heroin addicts? Or we used to, they're all dead now. But why did we have so many rock stars that were heroin addicts? Why did we have so many actors and actresses that were heroin addicts? And the answer is because they knew that they were in a job and they didn't think that they really were that good. And here they were trying to fool everybody, and by shooting up with heroin, it made them forget that they're not really a very good actor or actress or whatever. As strange as that may seem.
If you snort heroin, does it go to your bloodstream faster?
Yeah. A little bit. About 15 seconds faster.
Because on, what do you call that, Pulp Fiction, that girl, she snorted that guy's
It went right to her brainstem, and she stopped breathing.
Okay.
They thought she was dead.
Yeah.
So they had to inject her with epinephrine in order to get her heart to beating again. But there's a trick to that. You got to hit the heart. You can't shoot epinephrine around the heart and it's not going to work. They had to shoot that directly into her heart. That was the trick. Now a doctor can do it, but just some guy off the street trying to inject somebody with. First of all, you have to figure out, in between. You have to go in between the ribs, and then you have to inject it. And if you mess around while you're in there, you blow the guy's heart out. If you hit the aorta, he's dead. So you got to hit the heart. Anyway, it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's only about this big. It's not the easiest thing. One time, I'm not going to tell you that story. You don't want to hear that story. I had to draw blood from the guy's heart. That's my story. He was dead. Constipation is a problem. Decreased pulse, of course, which is what happened with Uma Thurman in that movie. She had her heart was barely beating. Your blood pressure tanks. It really tanks. Shallow breathing and inability to cough is really kind of interesting. A lot of times people that use heroin will gag to death. And the reason is because the mucus will build up in their throat and they can't cough. They can't get rid of it. So it just builds up and all of a sudden it's like they've got diphtheria or something. The way that we can tell if somebody is using heroin is by looking at their pupils. If you can't find their pupils, you open their eyes up and you can't find them, then you know that they're on heroin. You have what they refer to as pinpoint pupils. I mean, you can barely see them. They are so tiny. So you can imagine if somebody's shooting up with heroin, you don't want them driving because their pupils are so tiny, are completely constricted, and so they couldn't possibly drive. And of course, malaise, they have no energy at all. Sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? Let's all use heroin. Look at all the fun stuff that you get to do on heroin, malaise. You probably heard of crack whores. It's a lady that is a prostitute on crack. That's a possibility. There is no such thing as a heroin whore. If you can imagine, this is probably not the most fun person in the world to try to have sex with. If you can imagine, or not. Malaise, shallow breathing, low blood pressure, decreased pulse, the constipation, we won't worry about that. But look at that. I mean, what's the probability this individual is going to be functional, sexually functional? The answer is not at all. Withdrawal symptoms from opioid substances, tactile reaction, everything hurts. And they complain about everything. Psychological reaction, they have anxiety, depression, and craving. The craving is extremely strong. The anxiety and depression a lot of times is in the form of paranoia. So they think you're trying to kill them, and in reality you are. Because as far as they're concerned, you not giving them some more drug is killing them. It really bothers them. And of course, you're not going to shoot them up. Well, sometimes you give them methadone. Physical excretory reaction, they sweat. Remember before they're dry, they have dry mouth and nothing's coming out of their body. They can't even have a bowel movement. Well, when they're going through withdrawals, it's the very opposite. They have excessive salivation. Their eyes are watering all the time. Their nose is running, and it's whatever is in there comes running out their noses, and of course they sweat. And the sweat is really a very strong odor. Tends to be a very strong odor. It's the odor of fear, and you can smell it when you go into the room. You can smell the fear coming off of these individuals. The anxiety and the depression, the craving that they're going through, it's a smell of fear, and it's really stinky. It smells really, really bad. Digestive tract reaction, of course, before they were constipated, now they've got diarrhea. So as you can see, they're losing lots and lots and lots of fluid. So one of the things that you have to do if somebody's going through withdrawals is keep them hydrated, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. Some of these individuals, we have to give them IVs in order to keep them going. They need to drink water constantly because they've got all this stuff going on. If you've ever been around a wrestler, a lot of times they'll spit, trying to make weight, just spit fluids. So you can lose a select amount of weight. If I run 3 miles, I'll lose 3 or 4 pounds running. Well, these guys are losing that much weight, water weight, just by sitting there. They're sweating profusely, so you can imagine what's going on. Plus the diarrhea. Whereas before their blood pressure was low, now their blood pressure is high. And of course, if they've got heart problems, it can kill them. And this is one of the things that you have to do before you detoxify somebody, is make sure that they don't have heart problems, because potentially they could die from a heart attack. Whereas before they couldn't cough, they had lost the ability to cough. Remember, that's the drug that we give to people if they have a problem with coughing. We give them codeine, which is an opiate. Now all of a sudden they're just gagging, and everything comes out. Whatever, and sometimes blood comes out, so don't get too excited if you see blood, because they're coughing so much. Whereas before they had pinpoint pupils, now they have dilated pupils. So you still don't want them to drive, because they can't block out the light. Their muscular reaction is severe reflexes and muscle cramps, so they're in a lot of pain, and it's almost like having the flu. Nobody ever dies, hardly ever does anybody ever die from this. Usually it's a heart attack if they die from something. But if you've got, a 30-year-old drummer from the Grateful Dead or whatever, do they have a drummer? I'm sure they have a drummer. Of course they do.
Did you see
Yeah.
that guitarist on Kiss, what happened to his hair?
Guitarist, are we?
Because they're doing their last tour and everything.
Yeah, my daughter has tickets.
Yeah, well, anyway, the whole back of his head caught on fire.
Oh, no.
And he just kept playing and singing and everything, and they finally got his hair out. It was on news this morning.
I missed all the good stuff.
It was crazy.
I'm reading stuff about the shutdown, and I'm reading stuff about Donald Trump being a racist, and I missed the Kiss fire, hair fire. Damn, I miss all the good stuff. Drug withdrawal is the body's attempt to rebalance itself after cessation of prolonged use of a psychoactive substance. Many times for a chronic user, fear of withdrawal is one of the reasons for continued use. This is really severe as far as alcoholics are concerned. When alcoholics go into withdrawals, they have hallucinations, and the hallucinations they have are referred to as the DTs, delirium tremens. A lot of times this has to do with horrible, horrible visions. They feel like they're afraid of wolves. I don't know, humans seem to have a natural fear of wolves. They're afraid of monsters. They're afraid of a lot of different scary structures. Anything that is fear-inducing to this individual is now is part of their mental makeup. And for this reason, companies that produce alcohol, the ones that produce the hard liquor, will put these pictures, these tiny pictures of monsters in their advertisements. Why would they do that? Well, the reason is because as long as you're not an alcoholic, you never will respond to this. You never go through the DTs, you never worry about withdrawal. But if you're an alcoholic and you look at a picture of a bottle of booze and right beside it is a picture of a monster, the booze means I want to drink, but the monster tells you you better have a drink or you're going to go through the DTs. Now that never affects the rest of us. We're not alcoholics. So when we see that tiny picture of the wolf's head, or we see the tiny picture of the ghost, or we see the tiny picture of the devil in the advertisement, it doesn't register with us. But if I was an alcoholic and I saw that picture, it would make me want to stay away from withdrawal symptoms. I would want to stay away from withdrawal. And so how do I do that? I drink the vodka. I drink the whiskey. Crown Royal is big at this. They put pictures of monsters in the ice cubes. So you see a lot of pictures of them pouring whiskey over a glass full of ice, and in the ice cubes you can see these wolves' heads and whatnot. It doesn't say anything to us. We don't recognize this. But if we were alcoholics, we would see it right away. And it's subliminal messaging. Sometimes they're upside down. Sometimes you can barely see them. Sometimes the things that I'm afraid of, you're not afraid of, despite the fact that we're both alcoholics.
And Crown Royal?
Yeah, Crown Royal does it. Most of the vodkas do it. The next time you look at a magazine, well, if you can find any of these things, look for a whiskey advertisement. The reality is that only about 10% of the people that drink alcohol are alcoholics. But they buy most of the booze. I mean, if your friend can drink 2/5 of whiskey a day, you know, my dad used to buy 1/5 of whiskey a year, you know, and it was only half done. And the only reason he bought it was to take it to camp. He was in the Army. Take it to camp. He was in the reserves, actually, for the 2 weeks he was there. And him and his friends in his tent would, you know, have shots of whiskey. And they'd only drink half of it. So he'd buy 1/5 of whiskey a year. But your friend can drink 2/5 of whiskey a day. So if he saw the picture of the monsters, then he would react to it. My dad saw it, he wouldn't even think it was there. So it's messaging that doesn't affect somebody who doesn't have the problem. So they claim, come on, it's not there, it's not really there. Nobody else is reacting to it. Of course nobody else is reacting to it. They're not alcoholics. It's not going to make you an alcoholic by looking at a wolf's head. I know, this is weird stuff, isn't it? Subliminal messaging. It's a lot of fun. Many times, okay, withdrawal often entails muscle aches, pain, insomnia, vomiting, cramps, and on occasion convulsions. Feels like the flu. Feels like a really good flu, where you're vomiting and have diarrhea at the same time. So it's that kind of flu, if you've ever had that type of flu. That's what it feels like. But it goes on for days. 5 to 7 days. Kinds of withdrawal: non-purposive withdrawal, visible physical signs due to tissue dependence, seizures, sweating, goosebumps, the crawling flesh thing. You feel like you've got bugs crawling out of your skin. If you're tweaking, when you're not tweaking, it feels like you've got things crawling all over you. When my son was a chef, and when he worked in the kitchens in California, a lot of the helpers that they had were methamphetamine users. So they shaved all the hair off their bodies. That's what meth people do. They shave all the hair off their bodies so that they don't have a reaction.
Is that why they're just like always sitting there picking their eyebrows?
Yeah, they're always picking at themselves because it feels like there's something crawling out of their skin. So that's why they shave, so that they don't pick at their arms, because they have all that arm hair and all that leg hair and all that pubic hair and all that. They shave their heads too. So he could tell who was a user and who wasn't by how much hair they had on their bodies, or whether they shaved. And they'll shave strange things. They'll shave their arms. They'll shave their chests if they're men. They'll shave their chests so that they don't pick at it. Everybody has a certain area that they itch, and it's because of the goosebumps. Of course, vomiting is part of it. Diarrhea and tremors. They get the shakes. How do you keep from getting the shakes? Well, you take a drink of alcohol. Some people who are really, caffeine really affects them. They'll get the shakes if they haven't had any coffee or whatever. I don't have the shakes. 70 years old, I'm still steady as a rock. My mother was still starting IVs at 90. That's how steady she was, I know. Real strong hands. She used to milk cows when she was young. Real steady hands. Kinds of withdrawal, purposive withdrawal, expectation of withdrawal symptoms causing the rationalization of continued use of the psychoactive substance. Withdrawal effects can be observed whether there is tissue dependence or not. It is just the idea that you are going to go through withdrawal, so you continue to use. Protracted withdrawal, heavy craving for the drug even after the addict has been detoxified. This is usually caused from an external cue that causes the subject to have flashbacks to use and withdrawal symptoms. This often causes a recovering alcoholic to relapse. This protracted withdrawal, I was telling you about my friend earlier. My friend from up north, he liked to hang around with me, and it wasn't because he liked me especially, it was because of this reason right here. If he was around anybody else that had been an alcoholic, he felt like he needed to use because he was around these people. And they talked about it all the time. All their stories, all their fun stories were about when they were drunk. Despite the fact that they hadn't had a drink of alcohol for decades, they still talk about when they were drunk. So he didn't want to hang out with those guys. Well, I've never been drunk, so I'm no fun. Well, as far as he was concerned, I was better for him because I didn't talk about when back in the old days when I used to drink. So he'd hang around with me. It's kind of funny because he had replaced his drinking habit with gambling. And this guy was the worst gambler in the world. My God, he would lose every penny he had. So you had to buy him all. He didn't have enough money for a Coke. I mean, you had to buy him his pop. You had to buy his food for him because he never had any money in his pocket. If he had money, he gambled it away. Now the funny thing was, and I guess this isn't that funny, but he would hang around with me as long as he didn't have any money. As soon as he got money, he would disappear. He just all of a sudden he'd disappear. And he'd go in, he'd lose that money, and then sometimes he'd come back and talk to me. We worked together, so it was really kind of interesting. He would go and he would gamble all lunchtime. And if he won, he'd just keep gambling until he lost it all. He could make lots and lots of money, but he had to lose everything in order, I don't know, it didn't make any sense to me.
So it wasn't about winning the money, it was just the thrill of
The thrill of playing, yeah. Yes. He replaced one addiction with another addiction. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Post-acute withdrawal symptoms, persistent emotional and physical problems that last from 3 to 6 months after recovery, unclear thinking and cognitive impairment. And we see this with people on crystal meth. They get what they call meth head, which lasts for about 18 months. It takes your memory about 18 months to come back. So you're pretty stupid for 18 months. So if you're a meth user and you do this on a relatively regular basis, you're not going to go back to normal for about 2 years. Memory problems, of course, emotional overreaction to like everything, sleep disturbances, motor coordination, dizziness problems, difficulty managing stress, and craving the drug, of course. And this lasts for an extended length of time. I had a student when I was teaching up north. She was a meth head. She got caught. She got caught kiting checks, and they put her in jail for 18 months. And she used that to detoxify. So when she came out, she was okay, which was kind of cool. Until she got under something stressful happened to her, and then she started using again. And then she started writing bad checks again. It was really kind of odd that meth made her write bad checks. Yeah, she was never arrested for using methamphetamine. She's always arrested for writing bad checks. Sometimes drug abuse is a symptom of other underlying problems. When this is the case, the user will sometimes seek the desired effect by experimenting with drug usage. I told you about my second wife was an alcoholic, and I never saw her, well, I did. We had that drinking contest. I told you about the drinking contest. I won. I think I got drunk on 2 beers, and it took her, she got drunk on a beer and a little bit more. Yeah, right. She was using me to stay sober, and it worked for about, I don't know, we were together, we were married for 5 months, and we were together for about 9 months, I guess. But she used me to stay sober, and me and the kids, I guess. She really liked the kids. I'm not sure how much she liked me. She really liked the kids. Anyway, she could only tolerate it for about 9 months, and as soon as, I don't know, as soon as she got that craving, that old craving, she just left. She was gone. She took off, which is not the easiest thing on an Air Force base. I mean, you know, it's only so big. Where do you go if you? How can you disappear? It's not like she was a civilian or something. She was in the military, so she had to go to work. What she did, she took an assignment almost right away. Maybe she had the assignment before. Anyway, okay, she was using me to get sober, or to stay sober, and it worked for about 9 months. When this is the case, the user will sometimes seek a desired effect by experimenting with drug usage. Replacement, they'll replace the desired drug with another intoxicant. Some people who are whiskey drinkers will start drinking beer. It's not nearly as strong, or wine. Wine's a big one. Wine has not nearly as much alcohol as whiskey or vodka. Multiple drug use, they'll use different drugs to alleviate differing symptoms. They'll replace one symptom with another. Cycling, they'll use a drug intensely for a period of time and then abstain to lower tolerance or allow the body to repair. That's what Amy Winehouse was doing. Amy Winehouse hadn't had a drink for 2 weeks before she drank herself to death. And she was cycling. She would abstain for an extended length of time, and it would allow her body to recover to some extent. And the next time she started drinking again, she would get the same feeling that she got the first time she got drunk. And that's what she was after. So she'd do this whole cycling process. She would have been better off if she just drank all the time. Because it was like yo-yo dieting. She would get, she kept overstressing her body. She died of, her alcohol level was like 4.403 or 4.03. It's not that high. I mean, it wouldn't have killed anybody else, except she had just abstained for a couple of weeks and her body had come back. So she killed herself. She drank, you'll see people with 5s and 6s and it doesn't kill them. It would kill me, but I mean, I don't drink. But it wouldn't kill them because they have that tolerance level. Well, she kept building up her tolerance, or lowering her tolerance, and then when she got drunk, it took less alcohol to make her drunk. And she killed herself. She drank herself to death. You've heard of these kids that their college initiation is to chug-a-lug tequila or whatever, and of course they get drunk and they wander, they can't walk, and everybody laughs at them. They wet themselves, and nothing's funnier than a guy wetting himself. A lot of times they'll pass out, they'll go into a coma, and they'll die from alcohol poisoning. When we draw their blood alcohol level will be in the 3s or 4s. And of course that's what happened with Amy Winehouse. She died at 27. A real popular age to die from. Jimi Hendrix was 27 when he died. Janis Joplin was 27 when she died. As much fun as that is. Sad stories. Stacking, using 2 or more similar drugs at the same time to achieve a specific effect. Mixing, using drug combinations to acquire a new effect. Speedballs are cocaine and heroin. I know, let's shoot up with cocaine and heroin. That sounds like a lot. Who do we know that died of speedballing? John Belushi. Wasn't it John? Jim's the brother. John Belushi. And then Farley? Chris Farley. He died of speedballing. At the same age that John Belushi died from speedballing. Yeah, as weird as that is. Of course, in Vietnam, they used to lace marijuana with lots and lots of different things, but you can lace your marijuana with cocaine and get a really good buzz. They used to have what they called Thai sticks. It was marijuana laced with heroin. Ecstasy and LSD, X and L. Methadone, of course, we use that to treat people who are heroin addicts. If you mix it with Klonopin, you get a similar reaction as heroin. Methadone is not quite as strong as heroin. You don't get exactly the same effect. Sequentialing, going from one addiction to the other. This can either refer to drug sequentialing, drug replaced by a compulsive behavior, or one compulsive behavior replacing another. That's what my friend did. He was an alcoholic, had been an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic for like 20, 30 years, and then he got clean. But he never kept any money in his pocket. He became a compulsive gambler after that. And as I said, he would sneak off to gamble, which was kind of interesting. I told him he had the same problem. When I figured out what was going on, I told him he had the same problem, and he didn't want to hang out with me. Wait, that's okay. I've had wives that didn't want to hang out with me, so it's okay. Morphing is using one drug to counteract another. A cocaine user drinking alcohol to come down, using coffee to come down off of a drunk. Using methamphetamines to function during a heroin high, and this is known as morphing. Problem is that sometimes you can overdose, really easy to overdose when you're trying to morph. The level of use is determined by the amount that you use, the frequency of your use, the length of time psychoactive substances have been used, the impact the drug usage has on your life. So that has to do with level. Categories of usage include abstinence, that's not using at all, experimentation, social recreational use, habituation, abuse, and addiction. This is all going to become very important in the United States because we're trying to decide what to do about marijuana. So how much smoking is a lot of smoking? Toking, I'm sorry, did I say smoking? Toking. How much is a lot? Well, the problem with marijuana, if you smoke tobacco, it doesn't really, it clears your system relatively quickly. The problem with marijuana is it doesn't clear your system very fast. What else are we finding out? It creates It creates genetic problems for males and females, for males especially. They've done experiments with rats and humans, and what they discovered was that humans that smoke a lot of pot changes their DNA in their sperm. And this could be, who knows where this is going to lead. We found 600 different areas on the DNA that has been adjusted by the marijuana. And this is really kind of interesting. You don't know what's going to happen. And the stronger the marijuana, the more likely that it will affect your DNA. 10 states already have legalized marijuana. So we'll see what happens. Abstinence, experimentation, social recreational use, habituation, abuse, and addiction. The other problem that we have with marijuana is that we don't know what inebriation is. We know when somebody's stoned, but we don't know when they can't drive, how debilitating the marijuana is. And this is a problem. If you have a blood alcohol level of 0.8 or 0.08, however you like to look at it, then we know that you shouldn't be driving. That's the way it is all over the United States. In some countries it's 0.6, but in the United States it's 0.08. But how much marijuana can you have in your system and still be functional? People driving when they're stoned, not a real good idea. There's a lot of things that are thrown off by marijuana. It is a hallucinogen.
I think in Utah they made it 0.04 now.
Is with
Utah, the state of Utah.
oh, marijuana? Oh, their alcohol level, yeah, 0.04, which is kind of interesting because Mormons don't drink. They're not supposed to drink. They're also not supposed to drink coffee. They don't drink any intoxicants. So here they've got a law in their state that is half as much. So if anybody drinks, if you have any alcohol in your system, how much alcohol does it take to have 0.04 in your system? About half a beer. Whoops. But you can't have an open container in your car. So if you drink half that beer, you have to throw the rest of it out the window. Okay, well, this is interesting. Many individuals cannot choose their level of drug use, but are at the mercy of the psychoactive properties of the drug being used. Abstinence, of course, is where you don't use anything except maybe accidentally. Accidentally, how can you use a drug accidentally? Well, I used Listerine this morning. There was probably some alcohol in the Listerine. Probably. But I didn't drink it. Ugh. Drink your Listerine? But I swished it around in my mouth for about 30 seconds or so.
North Koreans are starting to use meth as just like an everyday thing. It's like
That way they get more work done.
they're putting like a little bit of it in their cigarettes and stuff.
That's perfect.
So it's like
You know they have the biggest army in the world?
can you imagine? North Korea?
It's all right. We did the same thing during World War II. So did the Germans. So did the Japanese.
Oh,
Okay. So
okay.
don't
We're
worry.
okay. We're okay.
Yeah, everybody's going to be okay. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore, but we used to. Yeah, we had people come back from World War II that were pretty messed up, and it was because they were using amphetamines. It wasn't methamphetamine. It was, it was amphetamines. Even if the person has a strong hereditary or environmental susceptibility for compulsive drug use, they never, by never starting, they never get hooked. So if you have alcoholism in your family, good idea not to ever start, not to try drinking. Probably a really good idea. If everybody in your family smokes, don't start smoking, because potentially, you are sensitive to that substance. If everybody's a meth head in your family, don't do it.
What about being FAS and like being around alcohol and once you drink? Because I've heard like.
That's a good point.
Yeah, like if you're, you have that fetal alcohol syndrome. syndrome in your body, and the first time you drink,
It tastes so good.
you just automatically
Yeah, yeah,
attract to it.
Yeah.
Is that true?
that is true.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's like anything that the mother consumes while pregnant, like the baby automatically develops like a taste for it or like a preference for it. Like it could be food or, you know, obviously if she's using alcohol, then it could easily be.
if it's oregano, they like pizza.
Bananas, yeah.
Right, yeah. Actually, the baby will, as the baby, okay, so the alcohol, mother drinks the alcohol, gets into the baby's blood. The liver metabolizes it, and then it has to go somewhere. Well, where does it go? It goes into the urine. The baby urinates it out, and now it's become amniotic fluid. Well, the baby is swallowing this amniotic fluid the entire time they're in the womb. So if there's a lot of alcohol in there, the baby develops a taste for alcohol. If there's a lot of oregano, they develop a taste for oregano. Just the way it works. My kids, my wife ate cherry peppers, and my kids just love anything dill. My son eats dill potato chips. I mean, it's really bizarre.
My kids are obsessed with sea salt and vinegar chips. That was like one of my biggest cravings, like all through pregnancies, and they all love it. And everyone around me, like family, they're just like disgusted. They're like, how are they eating that?
Exactly. My wife used to eat, she would buy a pizza, and she didn't eat it right away. She didn't like hot pizza. She would save it for the next morning, and then she'd put mayonnaise on it. She would eat cold pizza with mayonnaise. Her favorite was pepperoni and cheese with mayonnaise. Okay. Now I'm getting hungry. So you've got to be careful of these addictions. You remember I keep telling you about my great nephew, whose mother was a heroin addict while he was, and it took him 6 weeks to recover from his heroin addiction after he was born. This kid is sensitive to everything. He can't, and they need to be careful of compulsive behavior because he will become compulsive about anything. But he's only like 4 years old at this point. But this is not a family that controls people. They don't.
What about,
They're going to let him do whatever the hell he wants, and he's going to turn into a.
What about opiates? Opiates, like when a baby is in the womb, like say the last trimester, and say the mother gets hurt, and she has to take the opiates. Does the baby develop like a addictive personality too?
Yeah, but why would the mother have to take opiates?
Well, like say she got hit by a car.
I had this is when I was in the service. The lady she didn't know she was pregnant. She was in a rollover. This is in Germany. And she crushed her pelvis. I know. And she was pregnant. So what they did surgery. I can't remember what they knocked her out with. I think it was ketamine that they knocked her out with. But they wouldn't let her take any painkillers, despite the fact she has a crushed pelvis. She's got all these screws in there. They're trying to put her back together, and everything turned out okay. But they would never let her use any pain. Of course, this is in the military where you can do that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting situation. She learned to tolerate the pain. They were afraid that when she gave birth, that she would have a reaction. When she started going into labor, they were afraid that it would, pull her pelvis apart from all the contractions and whatnot. The weird part was that she had the baby vaginally. She had a normal, and they should have taken a cesarean, but they didn't. But she was fine. Evidently, she was fine. We used to take care of her kid from time to time. She's kind of a party animal. kind of feel sorry for the kid. Nice kid, really nice, really sweet kid. She wasn't a sweet kid. Anyway, so any compulsive behaviors, gambling, overeating, compulsive internet use, excessive sexual behavior, and you can see how these might occur with a select individual who has that problem, and you wouldn't even notice it. The compulsive overeating, you know, you feed the kid and they eat everything on their plate, and then they want everybody else's food. You know, and then this is what they're going to have to watch with my great nephew. Compulsive internet use. Well, geez, you can't walk around campus without half the people looking at their cell phones all the time. What about those earbuds everybody's got stuck in their ears? What the hell are they listening to? Is it what kind of wonderful music is out there that everybody has to listen to this
I
stuff?
think it's really rude.
And in order to say hi to somebody, you gotta wave at them like this. Because they're listening to the music and they're like in trance.
It's stupid too, you feel all stupid, and then like people have a thing in their ear and they're talking to somebody on the phone, and they're looking right at you,
Yeah.
and talking, and you're
Yeah.
like trying to answer their questions, and you're like, wait, what?
You son of a bitch, what did you do? I don't even know you.
On the phone with somebody else, that is so rude.
I don't-
It's rude, it's embarrassing.
I don't know. People talk to me like that all the time anyway. Research shows that individuals who wait until they're 18 years or older to experiment with alcohol, nicotine, or marijuana are less likely to use these substances as gateway drugs for more dangerous substances such as cocaine or heroin. If they can wait until they're 18, if they can wait until they graduate from high school, we're good. And this may be one of the reasons why I don't drink. This may be one of the reasons why I don't have a addictive personality. I didn't drink my first beer until I went to college, and then I didn't drink the whole thing because it tasted so bad. I just took a sip, and then I poured it in a plant. I know, I probably killed that plant. I don't care. I didn't want to drink that shit. However, if the individual experiments between the ages of 10 and 12, they're more likely to use the early experimentation as a gateway for more serious usage. And this seems to have something to do with what's going on with marijuana. They did a study in New Zealand. We keep talking about marijuana like it doesn't hurt anybody. Well, if you read all the stuff on the internet anyway. But they've done this study in New Zealand, and it was a 25-year longitudinal study. And what they discovered was, the study has just actually been published. They published a synthesis of the article about a year ago. But they published this, it has just come out. And what they discovered was that if you smoke marijuana before the age of 12, that you lose an average of 8 IQ points. And the range that people were losing was between 5 and 25 IQ points. Now, I don't know how many IQ points you got, but if I lost 25 IQ points, I'm in really bad shape.
What if like you're in a confined area and you're before the age of 12 and like everyone around is
Is smoking marijuana, so you're getting secondhand smoke?
You voluntarily.
Sorry, I was thinking about that this morning. Secondhand and thirdhand smoke from marijuana. We already know that it changes your DNA. So what happened? What? I mean, the stronger and stronger types of marijuana that they have, I mean, what if we start getting, you know, all these strange mutations taking place?
What is a third hand?
I'm sorry?
What is third hand?
Third hand, second hand is the smoke flying around in the air. Third hand is
Like residual?
the residual, yeah. That's third hands. Which is probably okay for you because you don't wipe the table and lick your fingers, but babies do. Okay. Little kids do, and this is a problem. We were in a house in California, And it was a hippie house. I mean, it was so cool, man. It had like rugs on the walls, dude. But it stunk. Oh, man. And it was in the rugs. In the old days, they used to have shag carpeting. And you know, shag carpeting is really long carpeting. So this house really smelled bad. It smelled like marijuana. And my wife, who has, she can't smell anything. She is so deaf in the nose. She's the one that rented the house, and I went in there and I just about started throwing up. I mean, it was that bad. And she didn't even notice it. What's wrong? We stayed in there for about a week, and then we left. But it was bad. I mean, that's third-hand smoke. It was in the walls. I mean, the walls were all carpeted, which was kind of cool if you look at it, but it's not very cool if you have to live in it.
What is up with the hippies, like, back in the day? Did they, like, because my grandpa and them, I used to live with them, these hippies, they have, like, this can, and it's always traumatized me. It must have, but anyway, it was like a Folgers can, and they, one day I knocked it over, and it had fluid in it, and it really stunk. And I was thinking, and they had a restroom right there, and I was thinking, I wonder if they were like peeing in it or something, you know?
I don't know. I wasn't a hippie.
It was
I
really
joined-
gross.
I joined the Air Force right out of college, so I was never really a hippie. But my first wife was. But she didn't pee in a can, I remember. It sounds like it might have been hash or water pipe, a hookah.
I don't know. what
And you put it in-
It was like a yellow, thick substance that I can remember, and it was in a coffee pot. And these guys were like severe hippies, you know, and it was really bad. It was like during that time when it was probably like almost the 80s.
So long ago.
I remember.
I don't know. In the 80s, I was in Germany, then I came back to the States, and I don't know. MTV started in 1983. I know. That's important stuff. So if you don't start smoking until you're 21 years old, you're unlikely to become addicted to anything. So if you don't do anything before 21, you think, oh, well, your brain has started to mature at this stage. Anyone who doesn't try an addictive substance until age 21 will probably not become an addict of anything. Nicotine, of course, is one of those substances, so you're probably okay. Now, the problem with being a teenager and using just like all of your friends is that this becomes a norm for you. I mean, if all your friends are doing it, then you want to do it. That's the way it works. And sometimes if you start smoking or start drinking at age 16, your brain stops maturing at age 16. So you've got a brain of a 16-year-old. This is your maturity level. And if you continue to drink until you're 50, your brain still thinks it's 16. It has never matured beyond that point. So you're still doing stupid stuff like 16-year-olds are at age 50.
Is that everyday drinking?
Experimentation. This is why those movies like Hangover. You know, I'm watching that thing and I'm going, geez, all these guys are like they're back in high school, and they're in their 30s and they still act like they're in high school. Well, that's logical. I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. This is one of the problems with fraternities. Fraternities, these guys drink a lot, and their brains stop maturing at whatever, at 18, because they started drinking at 18. Experimentation with psychoactive substances occurs because of curiosity, but no pattern of usage is developed, and there are no negative consequences from the experimentation unless the usage leads to injury, accident, or illness. The individual has an exaggerated reaction A pre-existing physical or mental condition is exacerbated. The user is pregnant, then it affects their child. The individual is arrested for use. Heredity or the environment dictates addiction. Previous addiction with other substances leads to relapse, and that's experimentation. People talk about experimentation all the time. Yeah, it happens. Social recreational use, this is what they're talking about marijuana. Oh, nobody really uses marijuana. Nobody gets addicted to marijuana. It's all social recreational use. Okay. Social recreational use, users may seek out a drug for the effect, but no permanent pattern of usage is developed unless they're an FAS person or they have an addictive personality, and then it just takes the one time. Usage can be controlled by these individuals as long as they do not develop drug-seeking behavior. Methamphetamine it doesn't work that way with methamphetamine. If you use it, you're addicted to it. If you use it the first time, and that's the message that was all over Montana for an extended length of time. You can't even use it one time, and they are right. This stuff is addictive the first time you use it. So people will start using, they use it the one time just for fun. Now they're stuck. Now they're hooked. Especially if they have an addictive personality. Or if they've been drinking before, if they have used alcohol before this. Now we got a problem. Now we got a serious problem, because they'll do anything for their meth. And of course, their kids don't have anything to do with it. Kids aren't important anymore. Just the meth is the most important thing. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time at habituation, if I can remember where I was.